Hey, good evening, SNC. We are glad that you are watching today, or if you happen just to be strolling by, we're glad that you're checking us out here on Facebook. I want to welcome all of our campuses, SNC Norwood, SNC Biker Church, and SNC Hispanic. And tonight is the Living Room series. We've been doing this ever since the quarantine has begun. And each week we have different guests, usually various staff members. Tonight I have a special guest, Ryan Waters, and I'll introduce him in just a few moments. Before we do, let me just give you a couple of announcements. Just be in prayer for one another and prayer for our church. We have a funeral that will take place tomorrow, and we have a couple people in the hospital right now. So if you'll pray just for those that are in the church, some of them struggling with health or other anxiety issues and relationship issues. In fact, we're going to talk about that this evening. I have Ryan Waters here. He's a counselor, and we're going to take some of your questions. I have some things I want to talk to him about, but we might be able to get to some questions that you would pose to him, some issues that maybe you're dealing with during this time of quarantine. Before we do that, I have a couple of pastors who are here today that I want to speak to you. So the first one is Pastor Malachi Dean. He is over our small groups, which we call connect groups around here, and he's got some exciting news of some upcoming events that are going to be taking place here via Zoom.
Well, hello, SNC family. Just want to say that we miss you and we love you. And real quick, want to give a shout out to Nathan Johnson and Trish Short. Both of them have a birthday today. One is 20, and I think the other one is 21, so I'll let you figure out which one is the elder. But happy birthday, guys. We miss you and we love you. Real quick, we have some exciting electives coming up. And if you haven't been part of an elective, this is going to be brand new for us too, because they're going to be on Zoom. And you have two choices. The first one is Life, Money, and Legacy. It's a Dave Ramsey 5 series through Right Now Media. And that's going to be led by Alyssa Ellis. And so if you want to be a part of that, you'll need to email Alyssa Ellis as kind of your sign up. And that way she'll have your information to get in contact with you, because this will be through Zoom. And so she'll give you some information to get you all set up. And these are going to be starting May 6th, so in 2 Wednesdays at 6:30. And the second one is Becoming a Contagious Christian. So keep the jokes aside. We actually began this elective here this past session, but because of the shutdown, we only got about 1 or 2 weeks into that, and so we're going to start fresh from week number 1 and kind of redo that one. And so we're going to be answering the questions of how to share our faith and why we should share our faith and what happens as a result of sharing our faith. And so I'm excited to announce those. Both of those are on Zoom. You want to email myself if you want to sign up for that one, or email Alyssa Ellis, and we look forward to having you in those 2 Zoom electives coming up May 6th.
Thank you, Pastor Malachi. And I'll just say we are going to continue the Living Room series during that time. So you just have more choices. You can either do something on Zoom at 6:30, or you can be participating in the Living Room series here at 6:30. But thank you for your leadership. That's a great idea. And I'd heard a lot of great things about the Contagious Christian one, in addition to the jokes that we all had. But so I'm glad that you're making that available again. Next, I'd like to have Pastor John. He is here. He's our children's pastor. And he's going to share a few things this evening with you before we get into more of the adult stuff later on. So we thought it'd be important to involve the kids here at the beginning. Hi, John.
Hey there. Hey, I'm excited to be here with you tonight. Lots of stuff are going to be happening. And you know, right at this time, I think about 5 months ago, you know, we were celebrating Thanksgiving, and maybe you were at your parents' or grandparents' house, or maybe it was with friends. Now, we can't always celebrate with others, and especially right now, we can't join others. But Psalm 69:30 talks some about this. And it talks about how we can praise God's name and worship Him, which we're going to do here in a little bit. But it also talks about giving Him thanksgiving. And so we're going to do that. Well, the kids are going to do that. You see, I know there are a lot of kids watching. Maybe it's in the living room, or maybe it's in the kitchen. but you're watching somewhere, and tonight will be a little heavier conversation. And so if your kid's out there, here's what I want you to do. I want you to worship with us here in a little bit, but after the worship's over, then I would like you to take a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, to one of the sides, I want you to write thankful. And you're gonna make an acrostic. So write the letters down the side, or parents, you can help. And then what I want you to do around your house, I want you to find items, or maybe it's people that you are thankful that are in your life, okay? So we'll start with T. I'll give you a heads up. T, you can write, I'm thankful, and where the T's at, toilet paper. Because some of you, I'm thankful that I have toilet paper in my house. Never would I have thought I would say that. But also, you might want to put turkey. So you can write those, or maybe bring them down while mom or dad, they're watching this, or whoever's with you. That way you're doing something and engaging as well. And then you could even post or take a picture of your list and what you wrote or what you brought in. Hey, here soon, we're going to start. It's a great video of our choir. It's a song that we love and we've sang in the past, and I hope you enjoy it, and please worship with us.
Lord, I'm walking around these walls, and I thought by now they'd fall, but I'm reminded, but you have never failed me yet. Keep waiting for the change, waiting for change to come, but I already know, Lord, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Oh, your promise still stands. Your great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. Still in your hands, still in your hands. And this is my confidence. You never failed me yet. See, I know the night won't last. your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Sing it, church. Faithfulness. Sing it as a reminder to yourself that you're still in your hands. Lord, this is my confidence. You've never failed me. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. No great is your faithfulness. Faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never failed me yet. You never failed. You've never failed. Thank you, church. 'Cause you are faithful, you're faithful God. You hold my life secure, and all my days are yours. I believe your God is like a fire, defending me faithfully. Hey. I believe you still heal, and demons still bow. I am convinced that there is power in trusting in my faithful God. So I will praise till you appear and set your foot upon this shore. I declare that every foe is subject to my faithful God. 'Cause you are faithful, God, and you hold my life secure. All my days are yours. I believe that my God is like a fire, defending me. Yeah, 'cause I've seen you move the mountain, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. 'Cause you're a faithful God. I'll see you do it again. 'Cause you're a faithful God.
Thank you, Scott. What a great reminder. Amen. I'd also tell you that if you just tuned in, the choir that was just singing, that was a previously recorded choir. We don't have 100 people here right now in the midst of the sanctuary, but it was a great reminder. That was a great Sunday morning time of worship. So next to me here is a friend of mine. His name is Ryan Waters. He and his wife Danny attend Springdale here. And Ryan is a professional counselor, and which is always always better than an unprofessional counselor, I'll tell you that. And he's going to answer some questions that I might have, and he's also, he'll answer some of the questions that might come your way as well. Pastor Malachi is in the shadows, and he is kind of reading through Facebook comments and so on, and so he'll yell out some if some of those come through. But Ryan, you and I, we've been in a small group together for a period of time when we went through a thing for purity, and I was just so impressed with the wisdom that God has imparted on you. And we've had each week, we have just a great group here. The pastors here are awesome. And but you, I'm a little more intimidated by you because you are a very smart person. So I brought my glasses, first of all, so that I could look a little bit more distinguished. And then also, though I don't really care to drink coffee, I saw you were drinking coffee. So this is just staged. That's all this is. It is coffee, but you might see me sip on it here or there. I'm just having fun with you today to kind of make you feel comfortable, because I know this gets a little bit weird with the video and all that. But tell us a little bit, first tell us about yourself, if you would. And then we're going to get talking about some of the issues that seem to be pretty prevalent right now in our society and in this current season in our lives. So tell us a little bit about yourself, so first.
Born and raised in the great state of Michigan. One thing we have in common, so go blue.
Wow, who knew he was going to bring that up? I mean, I had no idea. That was just a happen chance.
But came down to Cincinnati to go to school here and stayed on in the area and went to Bible college here in Cincinnati and graduated with a ministerial degree, and then decided that, felt the Lord calling me into the counseling field, into the counseling ministry, and so went to another Cincinnati Christian University here and got a master's degree in counseling, and eventually joined a practice here in Cincinnati where I work full-time called the Counseling Alliance. And in that practice, I focus primarily on marriage counseling, trauma, and sex addiction. And a big part of that kind of forms the foundation for all three of those fields, is looking at developmental trauma in particular. So how we grew up in our family of origins, what we received or didn't receive, and how the wounding from that shows up later in life.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
I've been married to Danielle, my amazing wife, for 6 years. We have 2 kids, Grace and Stephen, and they are 4 and 1. And as of now, everyone is still alive and functioning in my house. There have been no injuries thanks to rambunctiousness, so we're doing good.
And you're having to work from home right now, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. So that's, we talk about some of the challenges that we have as pastors doing this kind of stuff, but you're having to counsel people on Zoom or various ways. And I know some of the teachers, their issues are, they're trying to teach kids, and then their brother comes in and jumps on them, or, whatever. I can only imagine trying to get in a serious time with somebody, and that's kind of gets crazy.
I haven't had any of what they call the Zoom bombings yet. I have had a lot of pet bombings where people's pets jump into their laps, or in my case, my cat jumped in my lap one session. So, it happens.
Very good, very good. Hey, listen, so I've got lots of people that are, and you've been watching on Wednesday night, so you know some of the questions have come this way. But lots that are still just dealing with, struggling with isolation, things like that. I got this just today. I won't read through the whole thing, but it's a highly educated man who has a great career. He's single, close to retirement, and I'll just give you the gist of it. He just says, I still need a physical person to talk to keep me sane and not feeling so emotionally depressed. One thing I've realized is I can feel strong spiritually, but if I don't feel good emotionally and physically, it is still tough when living in isolation, exile, and solitary confinement. Are you getting this a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. And that demographic in particular is one of the more challenging when you literally have no one else in the house that you can communicate with. And there are some things that you can do to stay healthy, stay functional in those times, but he certainly is facing something that a lot of folks that I see coming to my office are also facing.
Yeah. So maybe we could start with that. Is what are some ideas that you might have to help people who are feeling that you shared even at your age with young kids, even the kids are kind of affected by the the closed-in four walls. So what are some suggestions maybe that you could, some bullet points you could say, these are some ideas to help you have a little better focus?
Yeah, a few things I think can be useful, and some of this I'm drawing from the astronaut Scott Kelly posted an article. He spent a year in space, and he posted some things like, well, what are some similarities between being locked in a space station and being locked in your home?
Wow.
And so a few things that he pointed out that I think are very applicable here. If you can, keep a schedule, because sometimes when you're stuck at home and there's no delineation of events, things get a little crazy.
Yeah.
So try and stay on a schedule as much as you can. And it's not that every second of the day has to be planned out, but at least just have blocks of time. Like in the morning, we're going to do this, in the afternoon, this, evening, this. Go outside as much as you can. And social distancing, keep your distance up, all that, even if it's just working in the yard. So my personal opinion is that nature is kind of God's wall charger for us. You know, when we get run down, you go outside, you reconnect, and you experience the glory of his creation. It tends to recharge us and also grounds us. That's another really good thing.
Vitamin D have anything to do with this with the sun, or are you just saying fresh air in general? And
I'm saying fresh air in general. The vitamin D certainly does help, yeah.
Okay.
This is more of a tangent, but cloudy days, rainy days do tend to be harder on folks, not just because they can't get outdoors as much, but because the gloom cuts a little deeper, especially with things like depression or anxiety. So make sure that on those days, you're doing things to stay socially connected as much as you can. So let me get to the social connection piece. I know that Zoom, Skype, Facebook are not as good as sitting across from someone and having a conversation. I understand that. But if you try it, you might be surprised at just how effective it can be when you allow yourself to just genuinely enter into that experience. So that would be another thing I would recommend, is scheduling at least 3 good connection points with close friends or family every week.
Okay.
So preferably daily, if you can pull that off for him who has no one else to talk to.
Yeah.
One other piece, this is just maybe drawing from my own experience, but I have a neighbor who would be in that same demographic. No one else, lives at home, retiree. And so at least once a day or once every couple of days, I'll try and find a way to connect with him, keeping 6 feet apart, just talking over the fence, some way to kind of have some kind of interaction. It's good for both of us, but he told me the other day, he said, you know, Ryan, if I wasn't talking to you, I'm not sure I'd be talking to anybody, and so I'm glad you're around. And it made me realize like how grateful I am to have other people in the home, but how important it is to reach out to folks who maybe don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and that would be true of those, as you said, for both of you. You know, if we can get so inward focused, and what about me, and woe is me, and all of that, but if we think outside of ourselves, try to help or be a blessing to somebody else. Every one of us pastors, you know, when we've gone to hospitals back when we could do that and visit people, you know, all of us would testify that we leave encouraged. You know, I mean, we're going to bless somebody else, but we end up getting a blessing out of that. So I think for people to step outside of their own current, you know, situation, to be able to be a blessing to somebody else, or even if that's not their intent, just getting out, talking to somebody else, they may leave rather encouraged along the way. You have a couple of graphs. I'm going to ask Malachi. Any questions or anything like that yet, Pastor Malachi? All right. So if you have any questions, I want to get to maybe some marriage, because, you know, we're not counseling face-to-face right now, but we're getting, you know, issues. Pastor John and Malachi, his wife, Malachi's wife, and Mallory, his wife, they are going to look at possibly doing one of these Zoom electives just for marriages. They just had a great elective here just before all this happened. So we're looking at that perhaps in the future, just because we're getting a lot of questions about marriages. So let's do that before we go to any graphs. Talk to us about marriage for just a moment. You know, you're in 2 people in a very small space with kids and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe that's a kind of generic question, but how can we improve during this time? Is this revealing weaknesses in marriages that were already there, and all of a sudden this, I mean, that's broad, I know, but talk to us a little bit about marriage.
I kind of view this a little bit like steeping a tea bag in hot water. Like, it's not necessarily creating something new, it's just releasing what was already there. And the more time you have together, it's steeping longer, and so more of that tends to come out. So people don't have the option of getting out of the house, going to work even to get away from stressful environments, and so they're forced to stay in the four walls, which just increases the amount of tension that can already be there in the home. So we do see that, a pretty significant increase in marital conflict, and on the darker side, even domestic abuse. The amount of domestic abuse that's occurring has increased dramatically through all of this. So how do you find a way forward with that? How do you find a way not to, for lack of a better word, kind of be tearing each other apart verbally or emotionally in the home? Actually, can I pull up one of those charts? Because it's very applicable right here.
Good time, sure.
So this is, Keith, if you're able to pull up that second chart in the second slide there, I think it could be useful. So this is essentially your sympathetic nervous system on a graph. And so when you feel safe and grounded, you're in that green window called social engagement. I like to call it the window of tolerance. You may have some ups and downs, but overall you stay pretty functional. You're calm, you're grounded, you're compassionate. Life's good. But when you get bumped out of that window of tolerance, like in an argument with your spouse, or when you feel very anxious, then you move up and your sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear and it puts you into fight or flight. So the way God designed the body, He designed it to keep you safe, which is where the sympathetic nervous system comes in. And it's designed well to handle short-term threats. It's not designed well to handle long-term threats, like when you're in isolation with someone that's getting on your nerves. So when a bear's chasing you, it works really, really well. When you're not, when that threat's over, either the bear wins or you win. Either way, the threat's over and you come back down into that green. And in this scenario, when you're in a relationship that's causing significant distress, it can keep you stuck in that yellow space, which is where you feel a lot of worry, anxiety, fear, and there's a lot of physiological effects. Your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, your body becomes physically tense. And if nothing changes, if that threat doesn't decrease, then you eventually go up into freeze and you start shutting down. And this is the Netflix zone. So this is where you start numbing out by binging on Netflix or video games. So I see a lot of couples being stuck in that yellow and red zone. And so knowing that they're there and how to de-escalate down into green is one of the best ways to deal with conflict. So it starts with a little bit of awareness, first of all. When you feel yourself getting amped up, when you feel yourself getting very anxious, your muscles start tensing up, you start sweating, your heartbeat increases, that's a time most likely to hit the pause button on that conversation. Because the fascinating thing is, when you move up into yellow and red, your prefrontal cortex right here just goes offline, which is the part of the brain that lets you think straight and allows you to make wise choices. It also helps you keep your words in check, so you often say things that you later regret,
Right.
because you're not thinking straight.
Right.
So whenever you move into a conflict that is becoming very difficult or very hostile, hit the pause button. And then take at least 45 minutes to an hour to do something that is genuinely restorative. And what that does is that 45 minutes to an hour, it takes about that long for your brain to come back down online. So if this is a very poor analogy of a brain, right in the middle you have your amygdala, and that's what keeps you, it's always in the lookout for threat, whether that be a bear, whether it be your spouse. And sometimes they are the same thing, I get that, but wrapped around that is the prefrontal cortex that we talked about. When that flips, it takes all of the resources and shoves it to the amygdala to try and keep you safe, because it thinks a bear's after you. And so it takes about 45 minutes for your brain to come back online. And then from that point, when you're in that green social engagement, that window of tolerance, then you can have a conversation that's much more productive, much more helpful.
So stepping away, whether that's go outside, go in the other room, whatever else, with permission. You don't just walk out, but just to
Absolutely.
say, hey, I need some time, give me some time, is the best thing at that point that they could do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned this. It's essential not to just walk away, because then the other person feels abandoned.
Right.
But to say, let's revisit this in a couple of hours, or I'd say no longer than 24 hours. That conversation has to be revisited, because things that get shoved in a closet and never revisited always come out as monsters down the road.
Yeah, and scripturally, don't let the sun go down on your anger, lest the devil gets a foothold. So we're wanting to do it as quickly as possible. But so what are you're suggesting right now that some people are living in? Can you pull that slide right up one more time? That some people are living in the yellow. It's not intended to be that way. That's not how God created us. That's just supposed to be the fight or flight kind of a thing. And they're
Safety mechanism.
A safety mechanism, and they're kind of living in that area. And so, longevity. What's that do? What's that going to do to us or the individual? When they're there for a long period of time, besides gray hair.
Yeah, well, it does wreak havoc on your body.
Yeah, physically, I would think that was
Exactly.
and emotionally.
It releases massive amounts of cortisol, the stress hormone. The possibility of heart failure, diabetes, all of the physical symptoms that you can imagine increase pretty dramatically when you're stuck in this.
Okay. So the goal is the idea is get as calm, to get in the green as soon as we can.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, man, that's good stuff. I've never seen that one. I saw the other one. Could you pull the number 1 up, Keith? Could you pull that? This is really interesting. We were going to share this a few weeks ago, and we never had time. And so when I saw your slides, I thought, oh, this is great. You want to speak to that for a moment?
Sure. Let me pull it up here. I got it on my phone. So this is a way of responding to everything that's going on with the COVID-19 crisis. And when you get stuck in unhelpful responses, you tend to get stuck in things like discouragement, expressing, complaining frequently, disconnecting from people that are important to you. You get mad easily. Yeah. And most likely, those are all symptoms that I'm hearing of that yellow zone that we talked about earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when you get stuck in that fear, remember that amygdala, when that gets flipped, your brain is in fear mode right there. So you're living out of fear, not out of strength, out of groundedness. So moving to green actually helps with this too. What I think is optimal is where you start moving towards what's called the growth zone here. So in that zone, you think about how you can help others. I'm reminded of, and this is a video going around right now, but Mr. Rogers, his mom always said, whenever you have a crisis, look for the helpers. Yeah. They're always going to be there.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's be those people. And, well, that's what the church should be in times like this. Not circling the wagons, but being the ambulance that kind of goes out and brings in the sick.
Good. Excellent. Hey, Pastor Malachi, you have some questions over there? Yeah.
We do. Here's a marriage question for Ryan. It says, my husband and I are responsible for our 2 elderly mothers and are also raising a 4-year-old grandson. Wow. How do we, as husband and wife, grow as a couple when we can't ever find time together alone? Mm-hmm. Great question.
And that's not just for the COVID crisis. That sounds like something after this is over.
Yeah, so anytime you're in that, something that's called the sandwich generation, where you have that many people living in the same house, it's really difficult. First of all, I just want to validate how difficult that is when you have responsibilities for those who are older and those that are younger than you. Trying to find space in that to make that a reality is really difficult. Yeah. You definitely do have to be more intentional about trying to find space and time, physical space as well, to make that a reality. So I could get into the logistics of, well, I'd recommend you set this amount of time aside. I'm not sure if that would be the most helpful because I don't know all of the circumstances that you're in. But I would suggest this. As much as you can, instead of allowing this time or even this difficulty to be a point of contention where you're kind of going this way towards each other, partner with each other and find a solution forward. So envision yourself standing side by side, looking for the goal of deeper connection, and answer the question, how do we get that deeper connection? Yes, I think time is going to be a part of it, like you mentioned, finding that time. But I also think it's more than that. I think it's dreaming together, envisioning what life is going to look like. Even if in this moment, just circumstances don't allow for a lot of time together because of the quarantine, start planning for a time when it is possible, when you can find childcare or respite care for your parents, and start dreaming about that weekend away, planning for it. And in doing so, you're partnering together, which naturally bonds people even closer.
That's good. And I should say that it's really unfair to a counselor to throw out generic questions that you don't know all the background, all that. So we're giving a response, but obviously each situation, you don't know the full situation, all that kind of stuff. You know, a couple weeks ago, I told the staff, I said, I think this would be a tough week because everyone was looking forward to Easter. And then usually, and people did pretty well, even though they knew it was online, they still were looking forward to Easter. But once Easter's over, the next thing is usually graduation, then vacations and all of that. And nothing's out there, you know. So something you just said to me made me think, how important is it then maybe within the financial budget of the family to have some things planned out, something to look forward to, if you will, just because some of these normal celebration times are not available right this year. So how important is that? Maybe what are some suggestions? Is it like vacations or a getaway or a camp out or something like that?
Yeah. So let me answer that, but let me jump back for a little bit before I answer that. Those losses, loss of a chance to walk down the aisle for graduation, or I know a lot of people who are planning to get married and during this time, and their weddings look dramatically different. Right. It's okay to grieve and mourn those, if you want to call them small losses. That has to be done. Yeah. Because if you just try and stuff that in a box and like, well, it is what it is, move on, it doesn't quite do it. Yeah. That compartmentalization doesn't actually work in the long run. But when you have a specific time of grieving, like, man, I am just so disappointed. I worked 12 years of my life to walk down that aisle for graduation. I don't get to do that. And finding a way to mark that as a significant loss, that's okay. That's appropriate and healthy. That is the appropriate way to respond. As a rule, we don't do that super well in Western society. And that's something I think we can take away from this experience is learning how to do that better.
I'm awful at that. So I tend to, wrongly, apparently, I tend to value people who just go with it, you know, like, and what you're telling, and so consequently, I personally don't grieve well. You know, it was years down the road after we had lost our daughter that I realized I just kind of plowed through it and all of that. And so when my kids, something happens and they're like, yeah, it's fine, it's going to be okay. You know, I kind of value that. It's kind of like, they're not, because I see the other extreme, because there is the other extreme. The other extreme is you cannot pull yourself out of this because you're going to waddle in this forever. And so how do we know that balance? Are there tendencies? For instance, if my tendency is just to say, take the high road, rose-colored glasses, it's going to be fine, you know. Others, maybe it's, you know, everything's falling apart, the sky's falling. And so is it just knowing our personality and trying to keep that balanced or what?
So we could go a mile deep on this one because a lot of it gets down into attachment style and how you learn to cope with life growing up. So if you grew up in a family where that was the norm, just, hey, move on, not really grieve it, then you tend to learn how to kind of put things in those nice, neat little boxes and move on. Yeah. I think in the long run, those boxes tend to pile up until you just can't carry that weight anymore. Yeah. And so that's why I'm suggesting it's helpful to learn how to grieve those small losses. Now, I hear what you're saying. You can get kind of stuck in that agony and that pain. I think that happens whenever someone well, I'm projecting here, but whenever someone grows up in a home wherever those small losses either are not handled well or they're not taught how to grieve or how to actually emotionally cope with that pain, then they're kind of left floundering later in life when those losses come.
Yeah, that's good.
So especially for adults with their kids right now, helping them understand it's okay to grieve this, but not every day is going to be like this day. Yeah. There will be other days that are better than this. Yeah. And then helping to regulate their emotions. See, when kids are very young, they really don't have the capacity to regulate their own emotions. That's what they learn from their parents. So parents are the kids' first emotion regulation tool. So whenever your toddler is melting down, they really don't have even the brain structure isn't there yet to help them know how to de-escalate and how to calm. So your calm, non-anxious presence is what they use. So this is a prime opportunity for parents to help their kids learn how to grieve those small losses.
Because they're mirroring
Exactly.
what you do. Yeah.
It's called co-regulation.
Right. Yeah. Good. Excellent. Pastor Malachi, you have another question before we move on?
This one was more of a comment, but I can turn it into a question.
Sure.
Maybe, Ryan, could you speak a little on the difference between, in our current situation, the difference between fear and having concern? The difference between fear and having concern.
Sure. So this goes back to that fear response, the amygdala. Whenever you operate out of fear, you tend to get tunnel vision, and the decisions that you make out of fear tend to be, for lack of a better word, less wise, less thought out, less intentional than ones when you're grounded. And concern, I would view as being in that green, can still be in that green space. You're thinking forward, you're planning. One of my favorite verses around this is, the horse is prepared for battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. And so concern says, looking down the road and saying, you know what, there could be some danger, and I need to make sure that my horse is ready for that battle. So I'm going to start preparing him now. And so that's very intentional, it's very forward thinking. Or Proverbs, a wise man sees trouble coming afar off and hides himself. Right. I view that as kind of the domain of concern. Fear is that reactive, I'm going to die, I have to keep alive, I got to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps us some.
That's great. Very good. So you're the counselor. I have little experience with this, but when it comes to, for instance, addictions, we use an acronym, or I always did, HALT. When you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, those are triggers, to use you guys' terms, I suppose. And right now you have a lot of people who are lonely, angry. I don't know if they're hungry. We're eating like crazy right now.
Yep.
And we're tired. If we're not tired physically, we're tired emotionally. We're just, because we're living in, level yellow there. And so everything I'm reading, this is really becoming a big issue. Some people relapsing in their addiction, some starting into it. You have kids, somebody told me the other day they have some kids that are home from college, and they're like, they'll come. I haven't seen them in a few days. They'll come down when they get hungry. Because they just, they're just isolating themselves. So, some suggestions maybe, or even want to validate that. Are you seeing that there's people that are relapsing or at least struggling with either habitual sin or addictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with a lot of sex addiction and porn addiction. And so being isolated, stuck at home with no one else around, that's kind of the perfect recipe for relapses and slips. And so knowing how to cope with that is a lot of what my work is revolving around right now. Knowing how to move into a healthy recovery journey, that's a really big thing to tackle. So I'll just give a couple of things that I think can be really useful. At their core, sex addiction in particular, but a lot of the addictions are what's called intimacy disorders. You're seeking intimacy, but just more in a synthetic form.
Right.
And so that process of seeking intimacy actually disconnects you from what you're really looking for. So part of the solution is learning how to genuinely get that connection, that closeness, that intimacy that your body, your heart, and your mind are longing for in the middle of all this.
Right.
So that looks like 3 to 4 healthy connections a week with people who are safe. There are a lot of online and telephone support meetings happening right now around sex and porn addiction. So there are people that you can reach out to and groups that you can reach out to that can help walk you through that.
Yeah, with this shutdown right now, we have, AA meets here Tuesday and Wednesday nights. We can't have that right now. And so I don't know where they went to. They're not part of our church. We just open up the doors. But I'm sure that is repeated all across our country right now. And so the only thing is, as you're suggesting, maybe some personal kinds. Some of them have, coaches with them or whatever, and accountability partners and such. But it just makes it difficult. So if you're struggling in some of those areas, we want to try to help out as well. We can point you to people like Ryan and others that can help or can assist. And at the very least, we want to have prayer for them to give them the prayer support through this time. So you had one other slide.
Slide,
Is
yes.
it something that you could do quickly or not?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that
So
one.
this is a resource, maybe we can even make it available. They're pretty common. This is called the feelings wheel. It can be really difficult in the middle of all of this stress and chaos to figure out exactly what you're feeling, and this is a good tool to figure that out. So at the middle, you have kind of the big categories of emotion, happy, sad, angry, and then the further out towards the edges you go, the more nuanced the emotions become. A lot of times I hear people get confused and say, well, I'm just really angry. Well, are you angry or are you feeling hurt and betrayed?
Oh, yeah.
So the more accurate you can get in expressing emotion, the more readily you receive the help that you need.
I'm going to print that off. That's really good. I've never seen that before, but that would be very helpful for me. Okay, very good. Hey, thanks for your time tonight and watching us. And I know you could have done a lot of things this evening. Maybe you were watching The Voice or something like that, but you tuned in with us tonight. We appreciate that. Ryan, thank you. I appreciate that. You work for Christian Alliance?
Counseling Alliance?
Counseling Alliance. And there's some regulations and so on. If they're in our church, you can't really do that. But if you know somebody that is looking for help, or they have other counselors there that he could turn you to for marriage or for personal issues or problems. And we're really super glad that you and Danielle are here. We've had some, at least one meal with them. And as I said, we were in a small group together. I just really love this guy, and God's really using him. I noticed you had started in ministry, or at least you went down that route educationally. You're in ministry right now. I think you know that. You have a front row seat to what God is doing, and also what Satan is trying to do. Yes. And so you're in the front rows and front lines. So thank you for your ministry, and we appreciate that. Any last words for us?
Just thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm glad to be part of a church that addresses these issues. Yeah. That's very transparent and real, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. And Ryan also helped us when we had our purity. We didn't call it that, standout retreat. He was one of the main speakers for that as well, and he was really helpful to us. So thank you again for joining us, and we're going to turn it over now to Pastor Scott. He's going to end the service tonight. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you on Sunday at 11 o'clock.
Be still, there is a healer. His love is deeper than the sea. His mercy is unfailing. His arms a fortress for the weak. So let faith arise. Let faith arise. I lift my hands to believe again. You are my refuge, you are my strength. As I pour out my heart, these things I remember. You are faithful, God, forever. Be still, there is a river that flows from Calvary's tree, a fountain for the thirsty. Your grace, it washes over me. So let faith arise. As I pour out my heart, these things I remember. You are faithful, God, forever. And I lift my hands to believe again. You are my refuge, you are my strength. I pour out my heart, these things I remember. You are faithful, God, forever. Let faith arise, let faith arise. Open my eyes and let faith arise and open my eyes. And I lift my hands to believe again that you are my refuge, you are my strength. I pour out my heart, these things I remember. That you are faithful, God, you're faithful, God, forever. Hey, so faithful, God. And so, God, we know that you are a strong tower that we can run into and we can be saved. And we know that you are indeed a faithful God. And so help us in these moments and in these times and in our everyday situations to continue to lift our eyes to the hills where our help comes from. And we ask for your strength and your help in these days. Amen. God bless you. Have a great rest of the week.